Good morning, ILT team.
Good morning, Dr. Nick.
All right.
Good morning, Dr. Nix.
We have Miss Piper, our master math teacher, and we have Miss Piper, our master ELA teacher. Earlier in the year, we met and we looked at our iReady math scores. We did identify some goals. We wanted 75% growth for our seventh graders. And so now we have to revisit that data to see if we obtained our goal, to diagnose if there's any patterns and trends and problems, to know if eventually do we need to monitor or reevaluate our action plan. So, anyone can share the data with me?
So looking at the data, we did not meet our 75% growth, but we did have 45% growth.
Okay.
What we did notice at the very beginning, there was like 18% of the students that were on grade level, and there was no yellow, and then 82% were in the red area, right?
Okay.
So as we look at the data, we still have that 18% that are proficient, but we grew tremendously for the yellow area. I think maybe instead of having 82% of the kids in yellow, there's only 54% of the kids I'm sorry. We had instead of having 73 or 82% on red, we now only have 54% on the red, and 27 have increased to the yellow part.
Okay. So in prioritizing that data, we know we're not going to change our goal. We're still going to focus on the seventh grade because we didn't reach our goal. However, we did have a huge impact with the 45% growth, which is still an improvement. So we still want to acknowledge that we did accomplish some great things this year. There's still work to be done, obviously, by looking at the data. Now, in moving toward our planning steps as we go into next year, we need to revisit our action steps. We're not going to change our target goal.
Mm-hmm.
Our target goal is 35%. We increased to 45%. We still got 30% left to go, but we need to revisit our plan and look at some of our action steps. So we know our previous action steps we identified as a shared vision, which was we have small group instruction. 2 was the learning centers. And we also had coaching feedback. That coaching feedback is 2 parts.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the coaching feedback is us monitoring the lesson highlights and then physically being in the teachers' classrooms doing observations to make sure that, 1, they're doing the lesson highlights and the instruction is aligned with the lesson highlights, and also seeing what instructional practices in terms of small group instruction and the rotation of learning centers in the teacher classroom. If there's any components I missed of the shared vision, are there any components I missed, team?
No, not the ones that we were focusing on.
Okay. Oh, 4. It was 1. The progress monitoring. Which is connected to coaching feedback as well.
Okay.
Progress monitoring should be mentioned. So in knowing that these are our action steps that we're going to take, we know they're effective because it created 45%. But now we have to fine tune to see how much more of it do we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what teachers in particular need the most coaching and feedback, because we do know that our 7th grade in particular is split between the supports of Mr. Mills and Ms. Mercer Hartley.
Mm-hmm.
So doing an even deeper data dive, which one of those teachers needs the most support, and how can we utilize our master teacher, Ms. Reynolds, to support the teacher that needs the most support so that we can have the biggest impact for our students.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any other ideas that anyone wants to bring to the table so that we can improve this plan and best serve our students and have a big impact on student achievement?
I think one of the things is our lesson highlights. We just kind of started calibrating them. And so now that they are calibrated, I feel as if we know what to look for. The teachers understand that leads into the small group instruction, and they're taking a deeper dive into their learning centers. And so it all goes back to ensuring that the standards are being met.
Okay. So when we shifted, I want to make sure I'm understanding. We shifted from electronic monitoring, progress monitoring of lesson highlights, to actually physically printing the lesson highlights out and looking at them in more detail. And you're saying that pretty much had an impact on student achievement.
I do believe so.
So if we probably would do that at the beginning of the year, as opposed to what 1 to 2 months in the year,
Yeah.
we could probably have some bigger impact. Okay.
Absolutely.
So becoming more consistent, coaching some highlights. I mean, um, more consistent in our feedback with lesson highlights. Actually printing out hard copies now. That's one lever we can utilize. We still have the monitoring of small group instruction, and we also have the monitoring of learning centers. Is there any improvements we can make there?
Definitely in the learning centers and the small group, making sure that we're intentional when we put the kids in a small group. That would be a must. And the other one, which is the progress monitoring within the learning center, making sure that we're monitoring them and they also have a success criteria. How do we know that they're successful? I mean, we can progress monitor them, but they can also progress monitor themselves, knowing that if they completed or they were successful in the task, they would know. How would they know? Because we gave them criteria of what is successful in that particular small group.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. So we have intentional student grouping to help improve our small group instruction. Not just allowing students to formulate their small groups based on who we're friends with or what group they get on, but being intentional and looking at the data. Who could be a student leader in terms of who has a higher understanding of math and maybe being intentional in grouping them with students that are middle ground in the yellow or lower ground in the red. I think that's a great idea. Um, Ms. Reynolds also mentioned to identify a success criteria. And in identifying a success criteria and making sure the students are aware of that criteria so that they can self-monitor, which again all aligns with our action steps of small group, learning centers, coaching feedback, and progress monitoring. Now, given the year's coming to a close, all of our data is already in. We are reformulating this plan and going into next year. So we need a timeline to identify the implementation of this action plan and the monitoring of it within that timeline so that we can repeat this process and make sure that we're getting closer and closer to our goal. Any suggestions?
I definitely think lesson highlights should, start out at the beginning that um, week one, that is a focus. Piper and I, now that they're printed out, we get a chance to look at them because before when they were digital, we didn't look at them. So now we can help with, you know, grouping and things like that. And so then I think that leads into the next one, intentional student grouping, after they take their assessments, which is maybe the second or third week of school. Then we can look at how iReady groups of students and, make sure that teachers know that iReady can group students for them. And then, they can kind of shift according to personalities and things like that. And, definitely have those student groups. And again, looking at iReady data, it tells you exactly what lessons to teach or reteach to students that are, what struggles that they're having. And so it's pretty, I mean, it seems pretty easy, but it's right there, all the data is right there, all the things that you need.
But the success criteria, like
Yeah.
if we look at those lesson highlights day one, we just need to make sure that the teachers know what success criteria is, because that was one of the biggest things that we found out. Teachers didn't really know what the success criteria was, and if they don't know what it is, how can they tell kids what it is? So we start on week one, explaining to them what a success criteria is. It'll be in the lesson highlights. It'll be on the board. So I think week one. That should be week one.
So week one is perfect time because the first week of school, we do have the district sponsored professional developments that are usually at the Cobo Hall or the TFC Center. Okay. Or sometimes they allow a principal to do it at their school site or they'll designate a location. So we obviously don't have that location yet because of the time period in which we are in the school year. However, we have our plan.
Right.
So with us revisiting our plan, we know week one, we're communicating the policies, the protocols of how lesson highlights will be used, the due dates in which they're turned in, which is every Wednesday, prior to or at staff meeting. So we've identified that. We're going to become more consistent in our coaching feedback, which relates back to lesson highlights. Being intentional in student grouping, we're going to roll that out in week two when the district starts iReady assessment, which also will give us our beginning of the year scores, which is our remark. You can always take that data and compare to see what effect summer has on our students. So we probably can expect some low scores. That is our marker to let us know where we're going to start and relate back to the prioritizing and diagnosing stage of where our 7th grade data will be in the fall.
Hey, that's student self-monitoring.
Yes.
We can start that in week two when we introduce the data trackers. Otherwise, the student self-monitoring. Looking at the data trackers.
Yeah.
We put a lot of time and effort in there, but I don't think we actually wrote it out the way we wanted to.
Yeah.
We want to be consistent in that.
So yeah, data tracking.
I don't want to keep everyone over. I do know we still have a school day to get back to.
Yes.
How are we on time?
Yeah, that's about to ring in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
I think we need to get.
So I'm going to bring our meeting to a close. Just a recap of everything. We have our action steps, which is going to be improving small group instruction, which we will be intentional in using our iReady data. We have learning centers. We have to define a schedule for that. So we really didn't speak to learning centers too much. We have to create a schedule for learning centers and roll it out at the beginning of the year instead of basically mid-year, which is what we did this year. We didn't roll out learning centers until February. So in revisiting those learning centers, we're going to start where we left off last year, but we're going to start at week one as well to have a timeline to it. And we're doing these up until April, which is our ending of our last iReady assessment. Coaching feedback and progress monitoring, we really spoke to in terms of defining success criteria, the coaching feedback with lesson highlights, increasing observations, and the student self-monitoring of the data track. So, we'll reconvene. If anybody wants to go to any professional developments throughout the summer, you all know my cell phone number, email, I'll always be around. Contact me, let me know. And then we can also use our own professional development to improve our process and student achievement as well. Any questions for me?
No.
I appreciate you both as always.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.